You are listening to Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans of the United States and Newfoundland, and an extra big hello to Canadian servicemen overseas.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Squid and the Ultimate Leaf Fan. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs Fan. Joining me as usual, my winger, Ricky Squid Vive. Squid, first off, how we keep? And secondly, a pretty rough week since we last spoke for our Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm sure I'm doing better than they are right now. You go into Edmonton and dominate and win all three, and then you lose two in Vancouver. Then you come home and lose to the Jets. And I've said all along, I think the only team in that division that can beat the Leafs in the playoffs is the Winnipeg Jets, because they match up very well against them. Yeah, rough week, but good for me because I lost about 3 pounds of hair or more. And
Yes.
I don't look like a Yeti anymore. I look like a normal individual.
Well, that's all a question of, in the eyes of the beholder, right? Okay, Squid, let's not get carried away, all right? So just keep it as it is. Now, today we've got an interesting topic. We're going back, and we as we've talked about, Ricky and I like to go back and talk to all facets of hockey. We want to start in the lower levels of the minor leagues, which are very, very important and critical to the National Hockey League, as we've seen the last few years. And we're very pleased to have longtime ECHL coach, who's close to your family, particularly more on Justin's side, with Matt Thomas. And he's currently the coach of the Cincinnati Cyclones, and they're not playing with the pandemic. But Justin plays for him and has now been loaned to Fort Wayne for the year. So we're going to get into all of that with Matt, and he's a very interesting guest, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this. But first, what we want to do is we've got to obviously talk about the guys. By the way, Squid, I want to point out, did you get off that wallet? There's the Ludwig.
I saw that.
Ludwig Strong shirt.
No, I haven't had a chance yet. Dan didn't have any when I asked him. So.
Oh, Danny Lancione people, reach out to him, grab a T-shirt, support him. They sold over 400.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of, I don't know whether I was disappointed or saddened by what I read today, that he's day to day basically and kind of hanging in there. I haven't talked to Steve or Mary Ann for a while, but, I thought it was only going to be a month from what they told me, but it is 3 months.
It's dragging on. And so folks, it's, boy, your prayers and our wishes are all with them. So let's
Yeah,
keep
absolutely.
Just on a not quite as important a topic, but our Toronto Maple Leafs, we're trying to hear it of his heart. By the way, we should mention that we see the press today and everybody else was doing their report cards. We had them beat by about 3 weeks. Okay, actually a week and a half. We beat them all. So they're all coming along now. I noticed a lot of them are very, very similar. They must have been listening to us, Squid. Now,
yeah,
the name that keeps coming up, Nylander. We've talked about Thornton, Nylander, all the guys. We see Agostino's in the lineup tonight, so we'll see if a little change comes our way. But it's at the expense of Travis Boyd, it sounds like, which I still think is a mistake. But regardless, teams are starting to pick up on what Nylander does. He doesn't like to go to the tight spots. He doesn't like to go to the dirty areas, as I like to call them. The tendency is to dump the puck. And what teams are doing, they pick up. And these guys are not dumb. They can figure that out. You certainly did in your day. That's leaving Tavares wide open, and they know the puck's not getting to us. And this is what they did to Marner when Marner was playing with Tavares, and they shut him down in the playoffs that one year. And you're seeing signs of that already. And I throw that over to you.
Well, I mean, Nylander's not exactly one of those guys that grinds it out that much. I mean, he's good down low. He twists and turns and gets out of the way, but he's a perimeter player. And you see him score a few around the goal, but not a whole lot. Not a player that overly loves to get involved in the physical part of the game. But I mean, he is a good, talented player. But come playoffs, that's not what wins you in the games for you in the playoffs. It's getting into the trenches and doing what you need to do in order to win. And then you got the problem. And I say this with I don't even know how to explain it with Joe Thornton. The guy's had an amazing career, and I love the fact that he came to Toronto to be one of the leaders and so on. But the problem is, where do you play him now? Because he's not really effective with, Marner and Matthews, and they kicked Zach Hyman off that line. And now they've formed a really good third line with,
Exactly.
Hyman, Mikheyev,
Yep.
and who's
Engvall.
the other gentleman
Engvall.
there?
Engvall.
Engvall. They're a really, really good energy third line that can score some goals. And so, I mean, they're talking about getting another top six forward. And I think that probably is what they do need in order to play the left side with Matthews and Martin. And, you get a big guy that can play with a little bit of truculence, but can, has the hands and the ability to play with those guys. And I think if they could do that, that might solve all their problems.
Well, I mean, that's what we're going to be sitting back to watch. But I mean, it also starts back in the barrel. And Freddie, he's been good, but not great. Good will not win when it counts. And everybody knows that. And that's just harsh reality, folks. It's not a knock on Freddie. It's just the way it is. The D looked a little flustered the last couple of games, but I think that may more have been a tendency for the accountability of the forwards slipping somewhat the last little bit, missing some responsibilities. They've got to obviously tighten that up and take a little bit of that off of Freddie, but he's got to come up with that big save occasion, just like the night with Hellebuck. I mean, that was a game Toronto 9 times out of 10 wins by 3 or 4 goals. He just stole that one.
Yeah, he did. But, one of the things I notice is how quickly the forwards exit the zone when they're in their own zone. And you're looking for those long stretch passes and those types of things. Well, what I noticed most the other night was how many of those got picked off and the Jets came the other direction. And, if they're going to keep playing that way, I mean, you got to count on all 5 forwards coming down into your zone and playing defense until that puck gets out of the zone. You can't be taking off up the ice and expecting those breakaway passes and so on, because that puts a lot of pressure on the defense and the goaltending. And if they're going to continue to play that way, they're going to get passes picked off, and they're going to have to defend.
No, you're right. And I mean, that's the responsibility of the forwards. They got to remember to play both ends of the ice. And that's why you got to shake it up in these teams. You can't be doing the same tendencies all the time, because the anomalies will not fester too far away when teams do the same thing all the time. And these guys are well coached, these teams. And these coaches, you're playing the same team 10 or 11 times. You're going to figure out the way they're breaking out of there. You got to switch things up. So I suspect they'll have a little better game tonight. Hopefully it'll clean some of those things up and we'll have a look. But here's a couple of things.
Well, they made a couple of minor adjustments on their power play where, with Matthews with the bad wrist, although it kind of drives me crazy how much they talk about it. But I mean, I don't think anybody ever talked about us when we had a broken wrist when we were playing. But anyway, it doesn't matter. He's a great player. And obviously it must be bothering him a little bit. But now they move him to the net front presence. He's a big guy. He can handle that. And he's got great eye-hand coordination. So he's going to tip some pucks in. And, so I think that was a smart move by Keith to do that.
Well, yeah, and you see offset that by putting Tavares back with the number 1 line. I like the way it was before. And with Simmons coming back, it'd be interesting to see if they revert back to that with Simmons playing in that spot when Matthews does get a little healthier, and they can have then 2 solid power play units. So hopefully, as we usually are recording this a few hours before tonight's game, we'll see. So today's trivia, drivel, historical facts, or any way you want to put it, I'll give you. There's a few here today that you might find of interest. Number 1, March 13th, this day in 1911, Marty Walsh scored 3 goals as the Senators beat Galt 7-4 in Ottawa. Now, the significance of this game, it was the first Stanley Cup game played in 3 20-minute periods. They used to play 2 30-minute halves before that. Great information to have. Wow. In 1928, on this same day, it was the first time that they can remember in history 3 assists were awarded on a goal. And that was Toronto Danny Cox scored a goal, and the assists were awarded to Eddie Roden, Art Smith, and Jerry Lowry in a 1-1 tie against Ottawa. Here's the one I really wanted to bring up.
Imagine how many points Wayne Gretzky would have had if they had 3 assists.
Well, I mean, that almost sounds like they talk about Mario in Pittsburgh when he'd be sitting on the bench and getting assists. Okay, so imagine how many he would have got too. It could have been. Those records may not have been around very long.
No.
I should mention on this day in 1996, and this brings us to a little bit of the discussion we're having about a certain player. So see if you can tie it all in. Dave Andreychuk, this day in 1996, had 2 goals and an assist, and Toronto tied 3-3 at home against Winnipeg. Very appropriate to play Winnipeg tonight. After the game, however, Andechuk was traded to New Jersey for 2 draft picks. He was moved to make room for 2 players acquired that day from the Islanders, Wendell Clark and Matthew Schneider. And the reason he was moved, salary cap problems to make salary room. Can anyone say Willie Nee? Is that where that's all going to go? So there you have it.
Wow.
Even back in 1996, this problem with money was still existing, and there wasn't even a cap in.
You forgot the 1986 one.
I was going to bring that up to not hurt your feelings. So we always forget about you. And I see you there with the long, droopy eyes because I always forget about you. And I'm not forgetting about you, buddy. I got you covered here. Ricky Vaive scored 2 goals and had 2 assists in a 7-4 win over New Jersey in 1986 on this day. So now he's smiling. So now we can carry on with the show. So let's bring it on over to Matt. Let's see what he has to say. Squid, our guest today is someone Justin is more familiar with than maybe you. Originally from BC, played some minor hockey for the St. Mike Buzzers, played college hockey at RIT, got right into coaching after. Has had stops in Atlantic City, Stockton, Alaska. We got to talk about that. And now Cincinnati. Please welcome to the show, Matt Thomas. Matt, how we doing?
Not bad, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you. Now, with no hockey in Cincy this year, how are you getting your hockey fix to be able and ready when it is?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's the one thing we know about hockey people, there's always something to keep you busy. And I got to coach my kids, so they can't wait for ECHL hockey to return in Cincinnati. So they don't get yelled at me every time they bust up a drill. So it's been great though. Great opportunity. I got 9 and 11-year-old boys. So a real great opportunity for me to spend a year with them.
Now, how is the hockey in Cincinnati at that age level? Is there a lot of interest for kids to play?
We're growing. So one of the things, obviously Cincinnati, the history of hockey in the area go all the way back to the Rick Dudley, Robbie Fatorik, Mark Messier era with the Stingers in the WHA, even a little bit before that with the Cincinnati Swords, which was the Sabres American League team playing in the American League. So long history of hockey. The Cincinnati Cyclones have been involved since 1990 in a few different renditions, from ECHL to the old IHL and back to the ECHL. So the hockey's good. We're trying to grow it. Like most markets right now, we're facility challenged in this region. So that's kind of probably the biggest issue. But some great players come out of here. There's this year alone with the Cyclones, we signed 2 former players that are local guys that came out of here, went on to play Division I college hockey, and one was a rookie coming out of Ferris State, and Jason Tackett, and Chris Crane, another one that played at Ohio State and was the San Jose draft and signed an entry-level deal, I think, after maybe his junior year at Ohio State, and a veteran guy. So pretty cool to see some of that kind of full circle element within your own community.
Fantastic. Squid?
Yeah, it's it's amazing. It's it's growing everywhere. When you see players coming out of Arizona, coming out of California, coming out of Florida, places like that, you're thinking that are playing in the National Hockey League and are good players. So I think Cincinnati is a vibrant city. It's a big city. It's got all the major sports in baseball, football. I think a few more facilities, and that's a place that can take off big time as far as being a really good youth hockey center.
Now, speaking of which, for you, Matt, you started off, you were born in BC, how'd you end up at St. Mike's and then off to RIT?
So my favorite joke about being BC is I'm just when we play 3-on-3 games, or you play, at East Coast, West Coast, or major junior versus NCAA guys, I get to be a swing guy in the East-West games because I grew up in Mississauga, but I was born in Maple Ridge, BC. So I don't have many memories from BC. I think my younger brother was born there, and then we moved back to the Mississauga area, and so grew up as a young Mississauga Terrier, playing AA hockey. Started out in minor hockey with Meadowvale. So I started out with brown, orange, and white were our colors from Meadowvale. Go all the way through and ended up going to St. Mike's to the school, played for the junior team, and then went to RIT. And guess what color we were? Brown, orange, and white. So I felt it was time that I get out of the game. When I ended in the same uniform I started. So I turned to coaching right away. I did have my 1 week training camp cup of coffee in the ECHL, and they just didn't have room for 5'6" defensive centers back then in the game. So I said, maybe I'll go stand behind the bench and yell at the big 6'6" guys.
Well, by the way, you moved to Cincinnati. What are the colors of the Bengals? Orange, brown, and white. Okay, so you don't be saying that you got away from it. You went to it. Okay, so you never left this far behind. Now, was coaching something you always thought you'd like to do, or is it just something you picked up later in your career?
You know, I wanted to play, right? I wanted to be an NHL player. I grew up. One of the cool things one of our neighbors was Bunny LaRock. So we used to come down and Rick doesn't remember this, but I was a kid hanging around the room and going to Mr. Green Jeans after games with all the players, and a different era back then when the players would go out into the thing for a post game bevy and something to eat. But so I grew up wanting to be a Leaf, right? Wanting to be an NHL player, and at some point I was able to I always was a captain. I was always just a leader within my group. I was the kid in the neighborhood organizing the road hockey game. That was kind of me. So I never really thought about it until I came back from the Florida Everblades camp, and I was trying to latch on with another minor league team after my college career was done. And our assistant coach at RIT had left the position to take, he got out of coaching completely and went into the business world. And my head coach at the time, Eric Hoffberg, said, hey man, you're a coach. I know you don't know it yet, but you're a coach. You want to be behind the bench. Luckily enough for me, my older brother, Art, had gone and done the minor league thing after playing at RIT with me. He was an assistant coach already on the team. So it was pretty cool that I got to play with my brother in college, and then we got to coach together in college. So it just seemed like a natural fit, and I went full tilt with it.
It's great.
So you had a gap in your career, a year. What did you do during that year?
Well, I
think people would be interested to hear this.
Yeah. So this is the trivia question. You know, when they always ask you, what's one thing that nobody would know about you? I like the saying that I coined the phrase "holy cow," but I didn't. What it is, the most interesting thing about me, I was I coach at RIT, and then I wanted to play still, right? So I was back. I'm skating in Oakville in the adult safe hockey league, and I get elbowed bad, right? Probably one of your listeners, right? Got me right in the chin, and I had a lot of concussions, right? I think I was dyslexic reading the game chart. I didn't know I was 5'6". I thought I was 6'5", and I tried to play that way. And I got a little bit of taste of my own medicine, right? I got a dirty elbow, and so it was actually probably the worst one I had, right? So, and again, I grew up in playing. That was the era when you kind of fought through those injuries. They weren't really visible, and you had them, but it was okay, and on to the next one. Unless your arm was hanging off, you kept playing. And so for me, it kind of put me on my rear a little bit, and I struggled. I was in Toronto trying to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And I got the call from James Boyd, who's the GM of the Ottawa 67s. And he said, I've got a gig for you. I said, what's this? He goes, instead of being a real hockey player, maybe you can act as a real hockey player. And I managed to weasel my way in with a couple other real good Toronto boys onto the set of Power Play, the CTV show with Dean McDermott, who played the big star, and Gordon Pinsent was the GM and owner. So we acted as professional hockey players for about 3 months, 4 months, and then I got on my way again, and drove down to Florida, the NCAA coaching convention, and went up to the late great Sean Walsh, who was coaching the University of Maine, and said, I want a job. What do you think you can give me one? And he asked, who are you? And I said, well, this is who I am. He said, meet me by the pool bar at 2 p.m. and we'll talk. And it's kind of the way hockey guys operate. So I went in, and the hockey world's always small, a couple little connections of people I knew that he knew. Next thing you know, he called me a week later and said, if you want to come be the graduate assistant coach at the University of Maine, we'd love to have you. And that's how it all started for me.
So here's a two-tier question for you. Number one, the biggest adjustment going from, and Squid, you can answer this one too, going from a player to being a coach, especially at the college level. And then from that period, going from being a college coach to the pros, the differences and adjustments you have to make.
Well, for me, it's from going to be a college player. You're the captain the year before, and your buddies, you're not allowed to go to the same parties anymore.
Well, that's my point. Yeah.
That was the first struggle. But it was kind of funny. For me, I kind of always was, maybe to some of my teammates' dislike, I was always kind of in that coach mode as an older player. When you became experienced, I was a guy that I think people leaned on a little bit. And so the transition was somewhat natural for me that way. As I went from college hockey to pro hockey, interesting, right? You get the breadth of people in their careers, the guys at the end of their career, the guys in the heart of it, and the guys that are new. And I was lucky enough to go work for Mike Havland, who went on and won a Stanley Cup with the Chicago Blackhawks. And we won a championship our first year in Atlantic City. We won the Kelly Cup. And it was just one of those kind of perfect storm situations, because the year before at the University of Maine, we lost in the national championship to Minnesota, in Minnesota. So it was, again, that success, I think, allowed me as a young guy who didn't play pro hockey, being around some successful programs. And I got to learn from the recruiting coordinator at the University of Maine when I was their assistant coach, Grant Stambrook. He's a legend. This guy recruited all the players to Wisconsin. Jimmy Montgomery still calls Grant every day. I was talking to Jimmy Howard the other day. Our kids played against each other. And, Jimmy came to Maine right after I left. So I was there when we recruited him. And he still talks to Grant Stambrook every single day. And Grant's now retired in Florida. But I had some really good mentors and Tim Whitehead was another guy that was there that really helped me be prepared for the challenges. And I learned along the way, and we all do, but it was, that was probably the biggest thing. Was I realized early that the coaching side is all about earning respect, not demanding respect. And I just went down, put my head down, and really worked at it.
Squid, you can add to that.
Yeah, in my situation, I really didn't have that many people to learn from, because our coaches weren't the best coaches in the world when I was playing in the National Hockey League. But I was fortunate that right away out of the NHL, I got a job in Charleston in the ECHL. And nothing about the coaching or anything, because I was very good with sports psychology and that sort of thing. So I was able to relate to the kids pretty easily, and it came pretty easy to me. The hardest part for me was the fact that I had to keep myself in check on the bench, because I wasn't responsible for anything going on the ice, and there was nothing I could do about it. Like, here I am, like, it's almost like I'm trapped behind these players, and there's not a darn thing I can do about the outcome of the game. So I would get in a few shouting matches with the referees and so on. And a couple of times, a couple other coaches too. In fact, I remember John Brophy and I, believe it or not, one time he coached me twice. And I remember Dan Fornell was on our team. I put him out there. He was one of our regulars, and he put his tough guy out there, and Dan beat the hell out of him. And Brophy tried to get around the glass. He wanted to fight me, and I'm sitting there going, "Hey, old man, he's like, come on, like, take it easy." It's like, and he's screaming and yelling and swearing at me. But the toughest part for me was controlling, I guess, my anger when I was mad at a penalty or something like that, because I wasn't able to go out there and do something about it. And so that for me was kind of the toughest part for me.
Well, you must have felt that too, Matt, coming as a player. That was where I was kind of going with that. Not only a relationship with the players, but yourself as a former player and watching this, knowing what should be done as a captain and a former player. Now you can't, you're trying to get them to execute it, but you can only suggest how to do it. You can't do it yourself.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I think former players do want to stay involved in the game, is because they love that style of that I guess the fever of competition, right? What it just really gets you. And the worst thing is that you can't do anything about it. So what I always tell the referees, most of the time when the coach is yelling at you, it has nothing to do with you. It's just we know we can't yell at our players that much, so we got to turn it and yell at somebody. And I think that ability to control your emotion, comes through the preparation, right? And then the experience. As a young coach, I was 28 years old as a head coach in the ECHL, and man, was I terrified that no one was going to believe I could do that I knew what I was doing. So the poor guy would blow an offside call, and I thought it was the end of the world because everyone was going to say Matt Thomas can't coach. So now I've got a little bit more patience in those situations, and you learn as that goes. But that's certainly because we're all super competitive. That's why we played. That's why we want to stay in the game. Is the competitive nature is what keeps us, and it's what we strive for. We really want that feeling.
Well, that's right.
Yeah, I got lucky, Mike. Though I had Andy Van Helleman, who was the head of the officiating in the ECHL when I was coaching. He came into Charleston one time, and he sat down in my office. He said, "Rick," he gave me a few hints, and he said, "These guys are doing the best they can." I said, "I know, Andy." I said, I'm not mad at them. I said, it's frustrating for me that I can't go out and do anything about the outcome of the game." He said, "Well, when you're talking to them, call them over, keep your hands in your pocket. Don't wave your hands around. Just talk nicely to them, make a joke or something." And so it was funny because I remember after the first time he had told me that, I called the referee over. It's Terry Koharski, actually. So he comes over, and I can see on his way over, he's going like, "Oh, he's going to talk to me. He's going to yell at me again." I put my hands in my pocket and I said, "Hey, Kerry," I said, "Really? Do you think that was a penalty?" I said, "Look at that one over there, right beside that lady over there beside the penalty box." And he goes to turn. I said, "Don't turn around now. They know we're looking over there." But I said, "She's a knockout. You got to go over there." And so anyway, I said, "But, oh, by the way," I said, I still don't think that was a very good call." So anyway, that was fine. There was no yelling or anything. He goes straight to the penalty box, pretends he's telling the guy in the penalty box something, looks at the one I'm talking about, turns around, looks at me and goes, "Whoa." So I felt right then I kind of had an in on how to get into the referees and kind of swayed them to come my way instead of the other way.
Well, you can both answer this one too. We were touching on here. Matt Smells will take it to the next level. Your indoctrination into the period as a coach, was it as you expected? Because you jumped. You basically went from holding a stick to a whistle. So was it more challenging or more frustrating being the new guy? And whereas Rick, from your angle, you're come from the NHL perspective to be that guy, the new voice in the room. Start off with you, Matt. What was that experience like for you, or in your mind?
I think I got lucky. So like I said, I went to Florida's training camp. I got released at the end of training camp. I drove back to Rochester. I'm sitting in Rochester, and I had just signed a contract in Columbus in the Central Hockey League. So I was getting ready to leave. This is a Friday. I'm leaving on the Sunday to go. On the Friday, our assistant coach comes in and says, "Hey, he resigns. He's got another gig." So everybody talks me into it over the weekend, and I'm like, "Okay, I guess I'll do it." Right. So I went from wearing full gear in the practice with the guys on Friday, training to go to the Central League, to putting on a tracksuit, and I didn't have much time to really think about how different that was going to feel. I think the fact that I got to do it with my group, so I knew the coaches. One of the assistant coaches was my older brother. all the players I had played with the year before. So, and we had a great program at RIT. We were always playing in the national championship, game or the Frozen Four. And so we had a lot of success. So the culture was really strong there. So it didn't allow any weakness, right? So it was just, I kind of came in and I got really lucky because of that experience and allowed me to fall in love with the coaching side.
So it didn't allow you either to think about it for a long time. So pretty much you were, let's put it this way then, you were sort of adjusting on the fly, because trying to initiate your thoughts into the system would be almost at some time maybe a little frustrating, because you would be like the square hole and the round peg and all that kind of scenario. Whereas, would that be a fair statement? And you just went with the flow basically in that respect?
Yeah, you know what? My college coach is a guy by the name of Eric Hoffberg, and he's a very popular motivational coach now. Works a lot with the Washington Capitals, Nashville, the New York Islanders. So he does a lot of corporate work and works with NHL teams. But he was really, really great at allowing everybody, even when you were a player, to feel like you had a lot of ownership in what was going on. So he valued opinion, and a lot of people are really good talkers. He was a really good listener too. Mm-hmm. So he allowed you to kind of say your piece. So I remember being a really young coach, and we're talking about the penalty kill, and he's saying, "What do you think we should do?" And I'm like, "Well, I killed penalties. I wasn't the best power play guy. I was more of a penalty kill type personality." So I said, "I would do this," and he said, "Okay, go in and tell the guys." And he gave me that responsibility. So right away, I realized I better start watching more video and better start getting into this a little bit more, because he's allowing me to make decisions and I better know what I'm talking about. So, but I had that opportunity to feel as a player graduating from that program that I knew I had ownership and that my opinion was valued. And I think that's always a great thing.
Well, it's funny that you said that, because we're going to bring him up later in the program. Bruce Boudreau, when he got called up to Washington, his first practice, they talked to the assistant. They said, "Well, here's the workout, this, we'll do this. And so he's standing so the ice blows the whistle and waits for the players, and thought, wait a minute, this is not the way to start. I'm not going to just do the routine that they're doing. I'm going to do it my way. 5-on-4, down in this corner, we're doing this, and this, you hear, and the players all just looked at him and did it. And he I don't know if it's bullshit baffles brains, but he sounded like he was in an authoritative mood. He had it under control, and it worked. Now, Squid, your experience coming from the NHL, coaching guys, I'm not going to say it was easier for you, but they're going to look at you a little different than say, no disrespect to you, Matt, but then say Matt, who's come from a college level and one of them, whereas you're coming from the show. Did you experience any of that, or did you feel that?
No, I think it kind of gave me, I guess, instant credibility with the players.
Of course.
The fact that I played that many years in the National Hockey League, I think. And but I was kind of a student of not so much of the game. I mean, I learned a little bit from each coach, not a whole lot that I had. But I did a lot of reading about sports psychology and psychology in general. So my communication skills were very, very good. And coming from the National Hockey League gives you instant credibility. So when you speak, obviously they're looking at you like, puppy dogs with their eyes open, like,
yeah,
because they're like, say, they're standing in front of a guy who played in the National Hockey League. But that only takes you so far. Now, my ability to communicate and do that, what I read and everything, gave me an upper hand on how to deal with guys and how to figure them out real quickly. And I mean, one of the things I still did when I even coached in the American League and junior, every single day I would pick 3 guys I would have a conversation with. And it wouldn't necessarily be about hockey. It would be about them, about how they're doing, how are everything. If they had a wife or a girlfriend, it would be how are they? Are they happy? How is everything? And I think the more that you kind of make these guys feel like they're really wanted and you care about them, then I think they're going to do a little bit more for you.
But you're 100% right. And Matt, I think you can pick up on this, because just think about this. The best players don't always make the best coaches. Wayne Gretzky, Gordie Howe, like it comes to those type of guys, it comes natural because they know how to do it. It's the guy who's, and this isn't a knock on you, but the guy sitting on the bench watching How many guys who were fourth line players who watched the game became better coaches because they understood it from watching what these guys did? And Matt, not that from your level, you're come from a player making that transition, but there is probably that relationship with the players that they could relate to you because you came from doing it yourself at the same level.
Well, I'll tell you the one thing so when I was at RIT, we were a Division III program. I leave RIT and I go to the University of Maine, and here I am, I'm 24 years old. And I'm like, these guys are the University of Maine. They just won a national championship. The Koreas are there. Steve had just graduated. Marty, the youngest Korea's there. You got Nico Dimitrakos, Doug Janik, all these guys that went on to play in the National Hockey League. And I'm sitting there like, are these guys? They're not going to believe in me, right? So what I realized really quickly was be prepared, be honest, and I worked really hard at video. One thing that I think I was always good at, and my dad played in the minors, and grew up in Montreal, played for Loyola High School, signed with the Oakland Seals out of Loyola University, which is now Concordia. And so my dad was a hockey guy, and I was the middle of three boys, and we were in Toronto, hockey rich. So for me, every night I came home, we walked in, Hockey Night in Canada was on. There was a hockey game on, so I really fell in love with building the passion that way. And what I knew I could do is I could always think it really well. It couldn't always necessarily translate into my hands and my feet as it was going on the ice. I was a little bit too intense of a player. So what I did was I studied the game. When I was at the University of Maine, I'd be in there until midnight watching video. And I knew BU better than Jack Parker knew BU, right? He was there for 45 years or whatever he was. And I made it a point to say, if there was a question that was going to come my way, I was going to have an opinion. It didn't need to be right, but it was going to be mine. I was going to say it with conviction, and I was going to be honest with how I felt about it. And I made that a real point to be able to connect with players that way, that I'm not going to sit here and tell you I did it this way. I'm going to tell you this is how I think you can do it. And I always go back to that ability to create ownership, and obviously Justin, Rick's son, plays for me. A lot of the times it's, what do you guys think? What do you think here? What do you want to do? And I want them to be very much involved in the decision making. Now, I also put my foot down when I need to put my foot down, and I think the guys, we have that respect level for each other. But I think when you connect with people, and Rick said it, right? The ability to go over and have those conversations and really have your finger on the pulse of just where everybody is mentally. Sometimes that's all you need to be able to teach a player how to be better, because they know you care, right? And it's that relationship building that really kind of builds a strong coaching foundation.
Rick, you can pick up on that.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's no question about it. I went over Phil, of course, back when, by the way, were you watching me on Hockey Night in Canada, or were you too young then?
I was ripping around thinking I could shoot the puck like number 22.
But I mean, when I coached, we had VHS tapes. I mean, now the systems that you guys have now, like on the computer, and it kind of puts everything in different departments and all that kind of stuff. But I religiously went over those tapes and watched those tapes, and would, the odd time I'd bring someone in to show them some things. But I think the biggest thing for me was that communication and letting them have a little bit of a say. But again, like Matty said, the biggest thing is you ask them what they think, but at the end of the day, you're the one that has to make the final decision. And but I can tell you right now, there's a lot of guys that played for me, and we won championships and had great seasons in South Carolina and then in St. John, New Brunswick in the American League, that would make suggestions. And I'd think about it for a while, and then I go, that's a pretty good idea. I think we'll try that, because I mean, these guys aren't stupid. I mean, they played hockey all the way up, and now, I mean, they have opinions on what should be done and what shouldn't be done too. And I think you have to listen to that. You don't always have to say yes. I think you're right, but there's times where you just say, you know what, it's a good idea. I think we should try that.
So just along those lines of communication, let's get into a little deeper part into this of this sort of equation as a coach. The ECHL, as we know, is a few levels removed from the show. So would you guys agree? And you can both answer this one again. The pressure in the ECHL may be on everyone a little bit more at this level because let's face it, a player being released at this level, the next stop is senior A or intermediate hockey, and you're a case of beer away from beer league. So I would say it's got to be especially difficult as a coach to tell that player that it's the writing's on the wall and the end is coming near. And you know what? You're going to be playing for Bud Zessel maybe in a year or two. Matt?
Well, I think the great thing about hockey is all roads lead to beer league. They all do. Like, I know how many Rick plays in a year. He's still playing them, and I'm sure it's because the beer's usually cold after the games he's in, right? But I think the greatest thing about sports in general, right, and the reason why we all play it, we all love to be, and if you're a crazy fan, you know, and you live and die by the results, it's because it gives you hope and it allows you to dream, right? And I think the one thing that I love about the game is I have a dream to coach in the National Hockey League. I'm still living the same dream I had when I was a 3-year-old, 4-year-old kid watching number 22 streak down the left wing in Maple Leaf Gardens. It's the same dream. You know, how it's going to look is a little bit different, but I've never lost that. And I think one thing when a player comes to you and, you know, we'll get somebody that's on an NHL contract that ends up in the ECHL and they're devastated. They never thought they'd see that level. And there's been over 700 players, I think that's close to it, that have gone on, that have started in that league, that have gone on to play in the National Hockey League. So the dream's not over. I think the job as a coach in the minors is to help guide them, but keep the spark in them, keep that drive alive.
Well, now let me just stop you there because, okay, just along those lines, and Squid, you can answer this one too, because you've touched on it at the beginning, and I want to get in this a little deeper.
Yeah.
The attitude of your players, okay? No, Matt, you can start off with this one. You've got the kids who are 19, 20, 21, or whatever, very young. Still, the dream is alive and looking forward to maybe playing in the show one day. You got that guy who's the middle of the road guy who may have a shot if solid things fall into place and happen the right way. And then you got the older guy who had the shot, missed the bus ride to the show. He's now stuck in this city and he's playing there. How do you keep that balance in the room from getting distorted?
So I think the most important guy that you talk to is that guy that had the shot and it didn't come to fruition. When you have that guy in your room, he's got to be all in, right? And for me, the cool thing about the ECHL is, so we're affiliated with the Sabres. So Buffalo is very involved in what our roster looks like. They want to be involved. They believe that the ECHL is a great spot for a lot of players to develop. You know, and obviously there's been tons of success from goaltenders starting out in the ECHL and moving up and becoming National Hockey League, not only players, but stars, really good players in the league. And one of the things that you do is we all talk about culture. Culture's somewhat of a buzzword, right? Everybody, like, what does culture mean? It just means this. Everybody's in, right? Either you're in or you're in the way. Now, if that older guy who is doing it because he doesn't know what he wants to do next, he doesn't play for me. I get rid of those guys. What I want is that guy, the only thing he wants more than anything is he wants to win a championship. So he's got a huge carrot in front of him. He's got the drive, he's got the desire, and he comes in and every day he sets the tone, right? And those guys have been there. Most of them realize where they missed the boat, right? And a lot of times the guy didn't miss the boat. He wasn't given the opportunity, or he didn't realize it was the opportunity at one given moment. And so I always say they're opening up the door and say, yeah, hey, come on into the NHL. And they're slamming the door shut on you as you're walking towards it. So you better go throw a big toe in there and hopefully it stays on your body and you can wedge your way in, because it's a really tough level to get to. And so you need those guys that their motivation is through the roof. And it might not be the goal of becoming an NHL player anymore, but they want to win and they want that feeling. And those are the guys you want to surround your young prospects with.
Would you agree with that, Rick?
The more I see the ECHL, obviously I see it a heck of a lot more now that my son has been playing there for a number of years. And I think you're right. I think, I mean, in his case anyway, I don't think he really got that opportunity. He had a few little, ups and downs here and there, but I don't think he really truly got the opportunity that he should have. But I want to talk about the ECHL in that when I was there, it was quite a bit different than it is now. I think in the next year or two, you're going to have about 30 teams or 31 teams, something like that. Would it not be a smart move by the National Hockey League to get involved and make sure that it's kind of a 3-tier system like baseball? Because, I mean, the American League, some teams, the rich teams, they carry 30, 35 guys that 10 of them aren't playing on any given night. They could be in the ECHL playing and becoming better players, and then eventually making the American League and then hopefully the National Hockey League. I just, like when I watched your club the last few years and having 7, 8, 9 contracted guys from Buffalo and Rochester, like those were good players for your team. And those are guys that are going to move up to the American League and have a full-time American League job for quite some time, maybe even make it to the National League. I think it's time the leagues get together and make it a 3-tier system and kind of work in unison, in my personal opinion anyway.
Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think that's it. So what's happened in minor league sports is if you think back to it, Rick, when you were in South Carolina, you had the United Hockey League / Colonial Hockey League. You had the old IHL, the American Hockey League, the West Coast Hockey League, the Western Professional Hockey League, the Central Hockey League. Can we keep track? Did everybody get all those? Right? There was a lot of options. There is, It's the NHL, the American Hockey League, the ECHL, and then the SPHL. Right? That's where it's at right now. And when I came into the league in 2002, one of the things I remember as we went, we merged with the West Coast Hockey League. That union came about, I think, in 03, 04. So after the first year I was in the league. And the goal, and from Brian McKenna, who was the commissioner at the time in the league, the goal was to create the 30-30-30 model. So this is before Las Vegas, before obviously Seattle. And the league's worked really hard to create a better environment for prospects. I think the NHL, especially certain programs, has worked extremely hard in understanding the level and what it can do for their prospects and their development and looking at that 3-tiered approach to development. So I think the growth is massive. You're seeing teams in our level. Like, I'll say this: when last year we'd be playing, and I'd come off the bench, we'd get on the bus heading either home or to the next city that we're going to play, and I've got a text from Jason Botterill and Randy Sexton and Jason Greeley about, hey, great game, good to see so and so. Had a 2-goal game. Nice to see Luukkonen had a shutout. Whatever. And these guys are watching ECHL games. They're following our level, and I think that's a really great step forward for just that goal that Rick kind of alluded to. I think people are understanding more and more that there's a lot of really good hockey players that sometimes they can't get the opportunity. And this gives them another avenue for an opportunity, because some of these guys just they take off and they get to the next level, and sometimes you don't know who that guy is, who that's going to be that makes the most of each opportunity they get.
So what would
Mike, sorry, the one thing that when I talk about that is, I look at some of the teams like the Marlies, for instance, and some other AHL teams. They carry like 30, 32, 33 players. I mean, they don't have their young guys playing 3-and-3 and so on and so forth. But a lot of times they're sitting there for weeks and they're not playing in games. They might be practicing. Whereas if they were down in the ECHL and getting actual minutes playing in a game, I think they'd be far better off as far as getting on their path to the National Hockey League.
No, you're absolutely right. That you and I talked about off air, Squid, and that's one of the things I think that. So, Matt, two things. One, what are the challenges the league faces to be more aware? I mean, obviously, more investment from the NHL from that standpoint. And I think they're starting to recognize it more as we see every day. But what from the fan aspect, besides attendance, would people be surprised that goes on in that league, or something maybe in that league they would not be aware of? And I'm referring obviously to the talent level, really how good it is.
Yeah, well, I think I better say my boyhood friend Jason Greeley didn't work for the Sabres, but Steve Greeley did. So I apologize to Steve, but I think Jason would trade spots with you right now. But I think one of the things that's really, so I was in the league in 2002. Went through to 2013. And then I left and I went to college hockey for 5 years. And I came back to the league. And I can tell you in that 5 years that I was gone from the league, how much it changed then. Here's one thing that I think is really cool about our sport right now. The speed and skill of players at all levels is incredible. Everyone's a more conditioned athlete. Everybody, the training is getting out of control. I think a lot of people think that they can become that, and I think everybody's got the ability to reach a certain ceiling, and I think it's really hard to get above that ceiling in terms of eliteness. Like, Connor McDavid's Connor McDavid, not because he went out and shot more pucks than what the next guy in the league. He had a unique skill set and ability to become that type of a player, but with that being said, I think the talent level of guys that are playing in the ECHL, the game is fast. The goaltending's phenomenal. The shooting and the playmaking, I was really impressed. We came in and we had a really good year in that 18-19 season, my first year here in Cincinnati. And boy, could we score. Like it was fun. I'd be saying to a guy, like, dump it in my head on the bench. And then the guy would toe drag and throw a backhand sauce pass. And the guy would one time it under the bar. And I would make a joke out loud and I'd say, or just do that. And the guys would get a kick out of that. I think the one thing that I don't think people really get an understanding of, just because, again, we're not on TV. It's even the American Hockey League. Like, if people haven't gone to watch an American Hockey League game, you're missing out. Like, those
Absolutely.
guys. Yeah, those guys are skilled. They're big. They're fast. The little guys are so dynamic. The speed that they make plays, and I say, because I was coaching youth hockey this year, and I was trying to tell the parents, I'm like, listen, here's where we're operating. We're on dial-up internet with these kids, right? Back in the day, and the kids don't even know what dial-up internet is, but the parents do, right? And so the players at that level and all levels beyond, like even in junior hockey going into college hockey, like the high speed element of how they can do things, and just that marriage between the skill and the brain is really, really unique. And it's making our game really fast, really exciting. I'm an old school guy. Like, as much as I love number 22, I love number 17, right? I love Wendell and but that player.
So do I.
The game is so different.
So do I, by the way.
Hey, you can't be in Toronto and not like both. But that's the game is really high octane these days, and it's funny how and I think a lot of traditional fans are trying to figure out what part of the game they really like, and it's almost so fast that these hits and they're devastating because the guys are just moving at a high speed.
It's so funny because, like, unfortunately, what the fans read is the Brampton Beast, and this just must just break your heart. The Brampton Beast goes out of business, and all of a sudden, no longer, and everybody, what's that league? Nobody thinks it, but they don't understand. Like, people didn't know about it. This is why the NHL has to get more engaged, let people know about it, talk about these players. And it's funny, Squid and I have had Jared Bednar on. can't say enough about the ECHL, what it meant for his career, what the league means, what the league means for players. Paul Bissonnette, you hear the guys in Spittin' Chickens go on and on about the ECHL endlessly. Nothing but support, and they've come on the show and talked to us about it endlessly. I just think we have to get more involvement from the National Hockey League and point out to people how strong this league really is and how good these players are. And as Squid and I were talking about beforehand, before coming on the air, with the age of the players getting younger, there's more players available. And that 25 to 30-year-old player is all of a sudden becoming older. There's still lots of skill left in these guys. And one only has to look at Jason Spezza or Joe Thornton still playing for the Leafs at 40 years of age and 37 years of age to make that point. So the hockey's still good. You got big fans in us here, and we think that, hopefully the NHL will step up and push this a little bit further.
Well, you got Jesse Schultz. He's what, 36, 37? Yeah. He's still performing at a pretty darn high level in the ECHL. And I mean, when you combine guys like him and Justin and other guys, and they're the guys that are kind of being the father type to the young guys that are coming in from the Buffalo Sabres organization, for instance, I don't think you can get a whole lot better than that.
It's honestly, it's the key to our success here in Cincinnati, and I think it's the key to the league's success, right? Is these young players, they need to learn, right? And because we all come, you come out of junior hockey, you think, I'm going to the show, right? Then you get an NHL deal, then you're in the ECHL, or you're in the American Hockey League, and you can't believe that you can't stick there. And a lot of people will think themselves out of the opportunity because they're wasting time. And you need those players that are really, I think dialed in to how important the leadership is. And I think what our league should have, and we talk a lot about this within the league, is that support to be able to have those veteran players. It's much like the rules. You have a rule on how many you can have, but financially, it'd be really nice to be more supportive of that veteran player because the role they play in a young player, because I can teach them as a coach, but somebody that's have lived through that experience recently is such a great asset to player development. And I think you see it a lot in the American Hockey League. They do a real good job with surrounding those young prospects with really good players. And in the ECHL, I think that's the model that we've taken. If you look at Buffalo, Rochester, and Cincinnati, there's been a real good mix of veteran players coming in to help the young guys. You look at a guy like Eric Stahl, like how good is Eric Stahl going to be for Dylan Cousins and Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart to develop? Like, what a ton of experience he has. And he's lived that life as a super high-end prospect. And he can really help those guys in the same way Joe Thornton and Jason Spezza and Wayne Simmons can help out the young league players. So it's a really important aspect of building a team and developing a level and developing a culture where kids aren't going to miss their opportunities.
And the other thing, Matt, too, you got to remember
that's a stall still there after the deadline.
Oh, well, that's another story altogether. I hope it's not here. The at the end of the day, though, Matt, it's all about winning. And here's the other thing about it, too. Even at any level, the more you win, the more people are going to come and watch you. So to make that point even stronger is Squid and I've said that fifth or sixth guy or last 5-6 guys on that AHL roster that are sitting there every day just practicing the team and never playing. Why not have them playing for the ECHL affiliate, helping that team get better and win games and build a platform for fans to get behind and support and show that the team is going to be supported by the National Hockey League team. And I think that's why it's so critical.
Yeah, you're bang on with that. And, two of the things, again, a lot of it is perception, right? And like anytime you're trying to change something, it takes time, right? You think about all the things going on in our world outside of sports that we're trying to change on how we treat people, how we treat it, what we think of other people. It's no different in this, right? We'd all love it to go like this, but it takes time, right? And everyone's working at it, and that's what's great. Same thing here. One of the things that a lot of players, they believe that if they went to the ECHL, right, that the mountain's too high. They look up at the mountain, they say, how am I ever going to get all the way up there? And in the American Hockey League, you're one step away from it in their mind. So they're so much closer, right? And that movement of players all the way through. We are in a business of winning games, right? And I think when you're putting young prospects in positions to succeed and be successful, Rick can attest to this. There's nothing better as a hockey player when you're in the zone and you're feeling like the net looks huge. Like you don't even see the goal, right? You just see what's open, and that puck is going there, and nothing worse when you're the goalie and the puck looks tiny, looks like a marble, right? So those two things, it's really nice to be able to create that success mentally for players. And I think that's where the ECHL can really come into play to help that development and you're saying the Leafs are doing a great job with Newfoundland, right? They've done a great job in their Newfoundland came into the league as an expansion team and won the championship. And that's pretty special, but there was a big investment from Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan and the entire management team to say this is an important part of the development process for all players.
It's great.
Yeah, it's the big thing too is remember is that obviously that the ability to get in there and play with some of the guys and learn and everything. But I don't think, even if you're at the ECHL level and you're a young kid trying to make it to the National League or the American League, which is the next step, I mean, winning doesn't hurt either. If you're part of a winning team for 1, maybe 2 years in a row, then all of a sudden your stock rises. I mean, if you're part of that and a big part of it, there's no question that regardless of what kind of player you are, winning helps. And it probably brings your chances to get to the American League a lot better than it was before.
Well, let's take that to the next step, Matt, winning and losing. What makes you, besides the obvious winning and losing, what makes you sleep better at night as a coach, and what keeps you awake at night as a coach?
Well, you know what? It's I used to not sleep. I put it this way, I would sleep in my office a heck of a lot, especially after losses, and then you'd come in and you think you could figure it out in a night. And the one thing that over the years, what I've realized is that the game's a 50-50 game, right? Every decision you make is going to be right or it's going to be wrong. And that in the game, like the same mistake that's happening in my kids' Atom hockey is the exact same mistake that's going on in the NHL. Just a little bit faster, right? And a little bit more polished in the camera angle, and the replay's a little bit cleaner. But it really, that's sport in itself. So for me, what I've tried to do is I've figured out that I can't change everything. I can't control everything. I can control attitude. Yeah. And what I've realized is that the player's belief in having success is way more important than their ability to be perfect. So if they believe that they can be good, I prefer them believe that and then tell them that they can't and they're not good enough. We can really beat each other up in this business, and it's hard. But what I found over the years is and I learned a hard lesson going to the University of Alaska Anchorage and coaching there. We didn't do much winning, and it was hard. And I handled it, but I'd never lost in my career as a coach. So, and even as a player, like I'd always been a part of winning programs. So for me, I did not know how to handle that. And I learned more in that 5-year stretch, I think, than I might have learned my whole coaching career, of just exactly what is important. And to me, it's all about what you believe. And I opened up with talking about the dream, right? What's the dream? Mm-hmm. Keep the dream alive. Keep that fire, keep it lit. And if the guys have it, and the fire might mean a little bit different things for other people at different times, but as long as the attitude comes in and everybody's really pulling on the same rope, things go real well, and the winning starts to take care of itself.
Well, you're right. I mean, that's part of the issue that it's all about. And, dealing with the players and the communication, as Rick has always been a big advocate for that. It's all about communication. So in your experiences dealing with players, maybe good or bad, any memorable moment you can share with us? You don't have to name the player, but kind of a funny exchange or a serious exchange with the player, either positive or went badly for the player or sideways for the player that you can recall?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of them, right? But I think one of the ones that constantly stands out for me when I think about how do you connect with players. I remember I was a young coach. It was my first year as a head coach.
Okay.
And we're in Atlantic City and we're in first place. We're having a really good year and we've lost 3 games in a row. And to a young coach, like the wheels are falling off, right? Like, oh my goodness, I'm going to get fired. What's going on? And I had a veteran defenseman at the time by the name of Dan Peters, who was a Colorado College star, played for the Philadelphia Phantoms in the American League, had been that prospect and was on the way down. And I remember coming out on the ice, and Mark French was my assistant coach at the time, and he was the head coach in Hershey, won a Calder Cup with Hershey, and I said, we're going to put a garbage can at center ice, right? Like I was Brophy, like I was trying to act like John Brophy or something. I'd seen Brophy do a few of these things over the years, and I said to the guys, I put them on the line, and I said, you guys don't want to work? Well, I'm going to make you work, right? So I made them go down one and back, and the guys to preface it, I wanted the practice, I wanted them to float, and they were unbelievable in practice. They weren't missing the net, the passes were on, the effort was awesome. So it was totally backfiring on me, right? So now I'm going to skate them, but I didn't really want to skate them. Like I didn't believe that the bag skate, you know, if you don't think your team's in condition, you bag skate. But to send a message, I don't know really what that does to the players all the time. Obviously, Daryl Sutter just had a little bit of a good bag skate, so there's a spot for it still in the game, right? But so I said, you know what, get off the ice, and I kicked everybody off the ice. So here comes Dan Peters, the veteran guy, already mad that he knows his career's kind of on the downswing, right? And he's like, you're losing it, right? And he didn't know what I had up my sleeve, so made the guys get undressed, meet me out on the beach. So me and Frenchie were standing out on the beach, and here comes the players, and they're like, what is this donkey gonna make us do, right? So I said, listen, do you guys believe in what we're doing here? And so I said, and they're all, yeah. I go, so okay, if you do, follow me. And I turned around, we ran into the ocean, and it was February, right? It was like the ocean in Atlantic City. So you saw the guys kind of look at each other. They were getting ready for the wind sprints on the beach or something. And we went in, then we went out, we packed up, and I had a paintball game set up, and we went and played paintball, right? So, but it was funny. This player was like, what are you doing? You've lost your mind. And, he and I had a bunch of good laughs, and obviously we still stay in touch quite a bit. So it's funny how, sometimes you have those moments that, you connected with your team in the thing. And that's kind of I don't do that stuff all the time. It's not like I've got one of those every year. That might be the only time I did something like that, but that's one where I really knew, a funny one where I thought maybe I was going to lose the team. Luckily,
that was good. That's a great idea. That was great. Squid, have you had one like that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I don't really remember one in particular, but there are so many different times where, when things weren't going well, rather than, your first thing in your mind is like, I'm going to skate the hell out of these guys and I'm going to make them suffer. Then you start thinking about it and you go, well, wait a minute. I mean, they're working their asses off. I mean, we've had a couple of bad breaks or whatever. So let me change it up a little bit. And we'd go bowling or we'd go do something else and, kind of get their mind off it. And, but the one thing you would have to do is have that conversation with them and make sure that they're still in and they're still focused on what you guys need to do for the rest of the season.
That's great. I mean, and so, on the other hand now, Matt, what about, you said you had that feeling where, you thought you maybe lost the team. What happened after that? You pulled that stunt with the water and did the team start winning?
Oh yeah. We went like gangbusters down the stretch, and it was great. And again, I think the one thing about, as a young coach, you make a lot of mistakes, right? You just do. And just because you don't know, you think and you lean on people that do know. But it was cool. It's at the NHL draft one year. We got that NHL Coaches Association coaching clinic, and you get into these breakout roundtable conversations with coaches. And I remember one of the questions that I had, and because you can just here you're sitting with these NHL coaches, and you can ask them whatever you want. And I asked, do you talk to your coach or do you talk to your team after games, win or lose? And it was funny. Everybody had a little bit of a different thing. And Paul Maurice's was awesome. He says, no, I don't need to talk to my team. Like, if they don't know how I feel about them at the end of 60 minutes, then I didn't do my job behind the bench. And I just thought that was a really cool thing for me, because for me, I'm wired really, really, like, I'm intense, right? And the worst thing you can do is go in and tell them just how much you don't like them. Then you go back and you watch the video and you're like, oh my God, we were actually really good. We were a good team. Now I owe them an apology. So I don't want to apologize. I don't want to. So after a win, I go on, hey, great job. Give them that's great. But after a loss, I don't talk to them, and I prefer to take a little bit of time to collect and then have that meaningful conversation that isn't filled with emotion and just the pure, because we just want to win. That's, everybody wants to win. The players do too.
Now, coaching, how long do you want to continue doing this? Are you looking to move up in the ranks at some point if you can?
Well, that's why you do it. I've got a great situation here in Cincinnati currently. Very strong ownership. Cincinnati is an incredible city. For a minor league team to be in a major league city like Cincinnati is a real unique environment. It was a big move from Alaska for the family, so I like where I like it for my family right now. But for me, I always say, people say, like, do you love it? I say, I don't love it. I'm obsessed with it. It's everything to me, right? All I do is think about hockey. I talk about hockey. I watch hockey. I analyze hockey. So for me, I want nothing more than the opportunity, just have great experiences. And it's really hard to make the NHL as a player, as a coach, as in any capacity. It's really, really hard. That's my dream though. So for me, I'm going to keep dreaming, and I'm not going to let anybody tell me I can't. And if it happens, great. If it doesn't, I know that I had a life in hockey. I don't want to do anything other than this, because it is my obsession. And for me, it's nothing more rewarding when I get to be involved in the game every single day.
I was going to ask you about Alaska. Now you ended up, but I'm going to preface this by saying how you ended up there and what it was like. Now, when I played in the Pacific Coast League with a team called Port Alberni, they used to go and play a weekend series against a team in Anchorage every year. Of course, they stopped the year I got there. Louis played with me in that team, Squid.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. And all the guys, when they would rave about how great a city, how great nuts they were for hockey. And it was just like Vegas of the North. Now, this is in the 70s, so it's a long time ago. What was it like for you there, and what was the experience?
So it's funny, right? So my experience with Alaska, I'm coaching in Stockton and Fresno in the western part of the ECHL, and we're going up. Anchorage has a team, so we go up there, and you go up there in January and February, and to walk from the bus to the hotel, from the hotel to the restaurant, you breathe in and everything's frozen. And Anchorage is a very temperate city in terms of, like, it never stays too cold. It never stays too warm, right? So it's on the ocean, so there's a lot of change in the temperature. But I never really loved it. The one year we played them in the conference finals, and we went to double overtime at Game 7 to go to the finals, and we lost. And we walked outside, and the sun was still up, and it was like 11:30. Like, this is in May, like late May, and I was like, that's pretty awesome. So I end up, my kids were young, so I wanted to transition. Pro hockey's, it's a tough business, right? It's not easy. You're moving, you never really fully unpack. And so for me, I wanted my kids to grow up in a little bit of a different environment. And I obviously had a love affair with the NCAA. I really loved the level's great, the coaching's great, the kids are great, everything's really nice. So I end up getting the University of Alaska Anchorage job. And I remember telling my wife, now remember, we're living in California. She's going to get milk from the store for the babies, and she's wearing flip-flops and a t-shirt, right? And I'm like, I got the Alaska. Like, no, you didn't. So fast forward, we go there. We didn't leave the state for 3 years. She wouldn't leave. It is, if you've never been, you have to go. It's an incredible place. The people are unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was by far, and this is not to knock any of the other places I've been, it was the coolest experience. So much fun. You're talking about moose walking through your backyard. And they don't call it fishing there. You call it catching. You just go in and you just catch them. Bears walking through the campsite. We got into the whole life there, and there's so many cool people. It's such a big state. Just an awesome experience. Now, the hockey it's right now the program has been eliminated. They have to raise a certain amount of money by August for them to reinstate the program. And that was going on when I was there. So really tough to get footing and kind of in the recruiting game when you never know if your program is going to survive. And it's very much run on oil, the whole economy up there. And so right now that program, I feel really bad for the people of Anchorage, the players there, the current coaches there. What an incredible place to be a student athlete, to be a coach, and to grow up as a kid. Like the kids in the town idolize the University of Alaska Anchorage Seawolves. And it was just a great 5-year experience.
Just a couple of minutes left here before we let you go. And we want to thank you for joining us today, Matt. It's been very enlightening. ECHL, I'd be remiss if I didn't say some of the strangest things you've seen over your years. Now, we've had players tell us everything from equipment managers being put in net to play goal to coaches or GMs phoning players going into an opposing city trying to find beer league guys to fill a roster. So I'm sure you've come across a few things that people would be amazed at in your career.
Yes, and yes to those two. The back of the bus being on fire, and you start to smell smoke, and then you're stuck in a city. But one of my favorites, because we had a John Brophy story, and Leaf fans will love John Brophy stories, and probably one of the best guys in hockey, right? But an absolute competitor. We're playing in Wheeling. The game before, we opened up the season with him. And we scored in the first minute. He put out 5 guys and they jumped line roll. Like it was 1-0. There was still 59 minutes left in the game. But he's like, we're going to send a message. That was broke, right? So we go out to Wheeling. So we come by, and in that rink, you got to walk in front of their bench. There's no tunnel to the bench like the NHL, all the NHL rinks, right? And he comes down and he puts his hand on top of Mike Havlin, who's the head coach. And he's like, I am gonna, like, it's threatening him that he's going to beat him up, right? And then Javi's laughing, going, "All right, bro." And I'm like, this is John Brophy. Like I watch this guy coach the Leafs. This guy's a legend. So first period, nothing scandal free. Come out on the second period, bro standing on our bench. So we walk out. So Javi goes, he's on our bench. I'm like, oh geez, like here we go, right? And he's 70 something years old. Like he's an old guy, right? And so we walk over there and we're standing on the bench, and we like look at their equipment manager, and their equipment manager's like, look, he doesn't even realize. So he looks, he's like, bro, you're on the wrong bench. And he's like, no, we're not. It's the second period. We switch ends. And we're like, you don't switch benches. And he's like, yeah, we don't. Like he's yelling at us. So the refs come out, the teams come out, like nobody wanted. He refuses to get off of our bench, and he's like getting ready to start swinging, right? And I'm just sitting there going, like, this is what I dreamt it would be like. This is exactly what I dreamt it would be like. This is slap shot right here in minor league hockey. So that story is the top. The other one is the old Toledo Arena. There was nothing separating the bench. Mm-hmm. So I'm a coach. There's a fight on the ice, so I'm kind of like leaning over, and I get pushed. I almost get pushed over. Turn around. There's a drunk guy standing on the bench. Duke's up. He wants to go. So you just answer the bell at that time. There's no talking, right? But he's literally standing on the bench, and security guards are just sitting there watching it. Like it was a little bit of the Wild Wild West at times. I can gladly say none of that stuff goes on anymore in the league. I'm certainly glad that I got to be a part of some of those things, but the league certainly changed. The professionalism is through the roof, and it's a credit to the owners and the league and our commissioner and the people that are running the league. It's a credit to the National Hockey League getting very involved. That things are going in a real positive direction for our league.
Squid, closing call?
No, I think it is. I mean, I think it says a lot about some of the players in the league too, especially the guys that have been around a while that keep this league kind of going and help the younger guys so that they can move up and so on. And I'm talking about guys that have been around for quite some time and they know they're not going anywhere. they have other things to look forward to, hopefully down the road. But those are the guys that keep this league going, because they're the ones that teach the younger guys who become better players and end up moving up the chain.
Well, what I like is I've been kind of torn to ask this question now, because I don't really want to put you on the spot, and I know his mom and dad are probably going to get mad at me for asking it, but I want to talk a little bit about Justin. Now, I see that Ben Boudreau is having some success for Wayne. He's coaching. His dad was on the show and talked about him, and his dad was not critical of him, but, you know, he called it as it was. He was learning and he was coming along very well. The succession plan coming into the league for kids like Justin. Now I've spoken to him, and he definitely speaks well beyond his years. He does exhibit a lot of qualities of leadership and seems to really understand game very well. Where I'm going with this is the fact that the succession plan for kids like Ben and for Justin to move them into the coaching, I think would be a good thing. And especially coming from the college transition to coaching would be the same at the ECHL level. And I think it's to be one of the foundations that could help build the league a little bit further. Would you agree with that, Matt?
Well, I'll tell you, I talked to Ben Boudreau just the other day, and I was asking how Justin was doing. And he's like, man, he's just a natural leader. Like it's really fun for him to see, right? And again, Ben's got a lot of really good experience. You know, he's worked under a lot of different people as assistant coaches, and he's done a tremendous job in Fort Wayne. And that's a huge rival. So I don't like him that much.
I get it.
I don't like him that much, but
well, Matty, if it makes
we're obviously shut down for the year.
If it makes you feel better, Matty, I hate watching them in that sweater. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, they're the orange and black. They're the orange and black.
There you go.
Get back over to red and black.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah.
But I think to finish my point.
Yeah, please.
This is what I think. There's so many incredible young men, and Justin being one of those types of guys. The day he decides to step behind the bench, look out. Like, he's got it. Like, obviously, you know, he grew up in Charleston, right? And he was out in New Brunswick too with you, or was he in Toronto during that time, right? So
all three places.
And when you're around that as a young player, and there's a reason that there's a lot of NHL players' kids that go on to have really good hockey careers, coaching careers. They're around that culture, and they realize just how important you need to act and behave and work every single day to get the most out of it. And it's just what youth sports in general will do for you. But like, great hockey mind. The one thing what I love about any player is if I never have to go ask you to work harder, we've got a good relationship. And like, sometimes it's, hey, settle down, big fella. Because, you know, he towers over top of Rick, right? He's a big
6'6".
Yeah, he's a monster. And I nothing worse than when he gets like an award and they want me to go out on the ice and present it to him. And he's on skates and I'm on my dress shoes. I'm like, come on, like this is almost like it's a comedy show. We don't need this, right? But he's to me, those types of players, there's so many good players in our league there's just not a lot of coaching jobs. There's not a lot. It's much like a player. There's just a select few that get the opportunity. But man, do we have some good people and he is my player assistant, meaning he's not Reg Dunlop in it, but he's learning, right? So every decision we make, hey, when do you think we should leave for this road trip? Do you guys want to go the night before? How do you want to do this? What do you think we'll bump and practice back tomorrow? Because he's the guy who's connected. He's got his finger on the pulse of the team. So he's invaluable to a coach in my role, because he knows what it's like. And when he makes that decision, like, he is going to be ready to climb the rank real quick, because of his experience, and he's the right type of person. He's got the right attitude, and again, I've never had to ask him to work hard, ever.
Well, you know where I was going with this is you see it in college football and NFL, where the kids come along and follow in the father's footsteps. So why not in hockey as we see it? Because listen, a kid living under the limelight with a father who's well known in the National Hockey League or is well known throughout playing professional sports, sees the highs, the lows, and if he's mature enough to adapt to that and understand what really does happen from an early age, and then carries that on when he gets older. And I think in Justin's case, one of the things went in his favor is the fact that he didn't really appreciate it, or not appreciate it. It didn't really dawn on him until he played for the Toronto Marlies when he was much older, that his father was actually somebody very well known in the hockey world, coming from other places. So he grew it in sort of organically as he got older. But to me, I think that's very important. And I think that's very critical to build that succession plan. In any good business, you do the same thing. So that's where I was going with this. And I just thought that I thought that's the answer you would give. And it's good to see, because I think that can only strengthen the league.
I think the other thing, Mike, too, is that when he went to the U.S. program in Ann Arbor at the time, I think that really helped him a lot when he was 16, 17 years old. And then 4 years of university where he's on his own. He learned how to cook. He took a cooking course. I mean, he's almost a chef now. This kid can cook. When he comes home in the summer, basically that's his job. He's our cook. And so we look after him and make sure his car's full of gas and so on. But I mean, he's had a lot of really good life lessons. He's traveled to Alaska several times when he was with the U.S. program and with Miami, Ohio. He's been to Europe a number of times. Like, this kid's been all over the world. He's already got to live a pretty good life, and he knows what it's all about. Trust me, this kid, he's got everything put together pretty solidly.
Well, that's terrific. And I mean, that's great to see. It's good for the game to see this and see the transition, as we've talked about, the succession plan. So, but anyway, Matt, I don't want to, I know you've got a son's hockey practice you've got to get to some point this afternoon and get back on the ice. We want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's been very enlightening. Like to have you back again when the season gets back up and running. We are big fans of the ECHL.
October 30th. October 30th is opening night.
Yeah, October 30th is the opening night next year. But anyway, Matt, thanks so much for joining us today. Best luck moving forward with the kids. And then when you get back with the big guys, and hopefully by next year, October 30th, as Squid said.
Well, I appreciate it, Mike and Rick, and even the young kids are starting to pass me. I'm starting to look up at some of them. One of the guys, an old Leaf, Blaine Stoughton.
Yep.
Right? His granddaughter played with my older boy. She's a stud. And Blaine lives here in Cincinnati, so he helped me coach. Yeah, I'm already looking up to some of those kids, but I appreciate it, guys. Every opportunity I have to talk about what our league in the ECHL can do for a player, and just how hard it really is. Like, a lot of guys think, well, I'm not ever going to play there. All these players are really talented, and I appreciate you guys doing what you do. Obviously, being a Leaf fan myself, it's great to see where the team is this year, and great to be a part of your show. Great, thanks again, Matt. Okay, best of luck. We'll talk to you soon, man. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, thanks, Matt.
You bet.
Well, Squid, always a pleasure to have anybody talking hockey, no matter what level it's at. The passion is there. The skill level at the level is there. You can hear it coming through loud and clear. This guy, Matty, he just eats, sleeps, and drinks hockey. And boy, oh boy, it comes through, as I just said, loud and clear.
Well, I know one thing I can tell you for sure is that my son loves playing for him. He's a player's coach, but yet he's smart. He knows what he's doing. And Justin loves playing for him in Cincinnati. I can't imagine him going anywhere else to play after this year, other than back to Cincinnati to be with Matt. And he's a smart coach. He's been around. He's been in a lot of different cities. And the good thing is guys like him are starting to push the ECHL onto the map where they should be. And that's what that league needs more than anything.
Agreed. And I think that's why more talk about it and the more awareness people are made of how good this league really is. And we've had everybody, as I said, even Gabby come on and told us about, when guys are going to the ECHL, how good that league really is. And, if you think you're going to go down there and just light it up, you're going to be very surprised. This league is very good. And don't be holding your head down low that you're getting sent down. You're not. You're going to improve. And these guys are going to help you. And I think as I said, unfortunately, when you get situations like Brampton, it just throws a black eye on the whole league, which is unwarranted. Because I can tell you could probably you could stop 100 hockey people in Toronto and nobody even know there's a team there, which is unfortunate.
No, they wouldn't, and that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate they even got a franchise to begin with. I mean, the junior hockey team didn't work there. They had to move eventually.
That's right.
And I mean, the only thing that was keeping that team alive was the city by giving them, I think it was $100 million a year for each
Not
year.
100, not 100 million, not 100 million.
I mean, $1 million. Sorry,
Yeah.
$1 million a year for the amount. Did I say 100 million? I didn't mean 100
You and I
million,
could build a
but,
team for that.
Yeah. Of course, I could too, but I thought it was. I thought I said $1 million.
Yeah. 100 million. No, you and I could build a good team for that. Jeez. Oh man, we'd be competitive even. Well, it's been another great show. Again, folks, we want to just, highlight again the ECHL. We're big fans. We want to talk about it. Follow the league. Take a look online. Follow some of the teams. The games are available. You've got to do a deep dive to find the search place to watch the games, but they are there.
Flow. They're on Flow Sports, FLO Sports. And there's college hockey, basketball, football. There's ECHL. There's all kinds of games that are on Flow Sports.
What's it cost? That cost, Squid. You're giving a sales pitch here.
I'm not really exactly sure. I think it's somewhere around $100 for the year. But that includes, that's the whole calendar.
Everything. All right, perfect.
And that's for, college basketball, college hockey, ECHL. There's all kinds of sports on there. There's everything you can imagine.
Fantastic. Well, we come to a wraps of another show. We're going to bring you. We'll be back next week with another guest. I just want to thank you for listening and watching on YouTube, or follow us on Podbean, iTunes, Apple, all your favorite podcast networks. We're available. And until next week, everybody have a great week, and we'll talk to you then.